Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm finally going to do a review of the Crosman 1377. Now the caveat to this is my Crosman 1377 didn't stay in the standard configuration very long, probably about a week before I started modifying things, updating things, upgrading things a little bit, but I did get at least a couple hundred pellets as just a pistol configuration before I started monkeying around with other things that you can add to these and making it what you see right here. I'll tell you that in the stock configuration, I did appreciate the pistol. It was very, very accurate. The trigger, it's not the worst of all airgun triggers from the box, from the factory. It was okay. It did not have the Crosman rail, of course, so there were no optics rails. You couldn't put a red dot on there or anything else like what I have here. It just wouldn't work. And also, it did not have a threaded portion here on the end cap, nor did it have a stock. And just everything else that you see on here, Picatinny, some of these accessories, it didn't have that kind of stuff, but it still shot pretty well. And so what I know is the barrel is not a halfway bad barrel. It's pretty decent. The trigger was the limiting factor, I feel like, as well as the fact that when I shoot irons that were as basic as the irons that came with this pistol, when it was just a pistol configuration, those they kind of blend into the target, if I can say that. It just blends in, doesn't stand out. There's not enough contrast there for me, so that was one limiting factor. Just having a reticle like what I have on this Cyclops. This is the ACSS 1X, the new one from Primary Arms. Maybe it's Gen 3, I think, Cyclops. Don't really care, don't remember, but you can look it up online, check out their website. You'll see this one is their newest generation of that. And it has a reticle and it helps my eye. I have astigmatism, so I tend to not playing around with red dots too much unless I can get them really, really crisp and clear, which means not very bright. I like prism sights a lot better. So the standard configuration was decent. I enjoyed the pistol as it was. I was halfway tempted to have one that was just stock, don't do anything to it, and then some other ones that I would upgrade and do all this stuff to. But just going to be honest with you, I can't help myself. As soon as I started realizing how much more it could be, pretty much any of these that I buy, if I buy any in the future, they're going to end up looking somewhat similar to this because they're just so much more capable. So the first thing that I did when I got my Crosman 1377, and I had a couple hundred rounds through it at least, is I took the grip off and I grabbed the spring, and I don't think I clipped it. I know that some people talked about clipping and stretching the spring. I think with this one, because I needed overall length, and I was concerned about overall length to make contact and proper pressure, I think I stretched the spring a little bit. And it was too light at first, and it wouldn't cock or something like that. And then I went back and compressed it a little bit, and it did not take much, guys. I'm going to tell you that if you go ahead and modify that spring, you avoid whatever warranty because you took apart a trigger mechanism. But aside from that, it was really easy to stretch it out just a little bit, and it didn't cost me anything. So that was cool. I usually end up putting a different spring in most air guns, but this one didn't need to do that. It was just a little stretch on the spring, and it worked well. This is actually one of my better air gun triggers now. And I did, kind of go back and forth with that a little bit. And didn't take too long before I figured out what the proper pull weight was. Right now, I think I'm right around 2.5 pounds, something like that for this trigger weight on this Crosman, and that's just fine. It's not amazing. The over travel is still there. A little bit of creep is still there, but it does have a definitive wall and a breaking point, especially compared to other air guns. This is better. And I'm pretty happy with that. So that's a big deal to me. If you watch my channel, I care a lot about triggers, and it's one of the reasons I think this is able to be shot so well, that I'm able to be accurate with this, aside from the barrel being relatively precise and consistent. Now, after changing out the trigger, the next thing I went to do was to put on an optics rail. So I did get the Crosman breech here. Not difficult to install. It was pretty easy. There are a couple pieces in there you want to just be careful to not, sideways thread or strip out the heads when you're taking it out or putting it back in. You don't want to mess around with that too much going into the breech there. The transfer port, getting things put back together there, really not too difficult. but it at least goes up to about here underneath, and it's a dovetail. So from back here up to here, you lose your rear sight, which is no problem for me. I didn't really care for the rear sight anyways. And so putting this on there allows for just a little bit more reach. And if you've seen my other airgun builds, I can actually put a cantilever mount up here and put a big optic, like, you know, a 6-24 or something up here, and have proper eye relief, and I can still fold it and get a small package. I like putting that on there. I decided that I wanted to try something, and so there is a full length, I think it's like an 11 or 12 inch Picatinny rail that actually runs, and it's a dovetail to Picatinny converter that they make. And, or actually, no, this one's Picatinny. I put in the dovetail converters. I'm sorry. I have some of those little inserts that go into Picatinny. I put those in there. I think there's a model of this that is just dovetail to Picatinny. And I wanted a full rail so I could try a couple different things. And that's what you're seeing right there. So I put that on there. And I had, I don't know, a handful of different optics. I decided to go ahead and put a primary arms 1X on there just because I like the optic quite a bit, and it's kind of fun. And since I wanted to have enough real estate to put on an Olight, and whoops, I've run this for a while tonight and it might be dying at this point. It's 0 degrees out right now, and so when it gets cold and you run it in the cold, it does die down. But I wanted to be able to throw that on there and actually use it. And so I was shooting pop cans today in the absolute dark. You know, the sun goes down a little bit after 4 p.m. and it's just dark. And so time when I would normally have off of work and I'd be able to shoot a little bit, I can't unless I have a light on a gun. So aside from just being a gimmicky, goofy thing that I did, I can actually shoot at stuff and I can see it. And this light works well for that. Pressure pad, I think it's included in this particular package, whatever Olight that is. So that was a cool addition, throwing that on there. Of course, BuckRail is the next thing I'm going to talk about. BuckRail makes the best air gun accessories and upgrades for the 1377 and many other air gun rifles. But I'm going to tell you, when it comes to the 1377, this wouldn't look anything like this if it wasn't for BuckRail. BuckRail is the company that is the most affordable. I can't believe how affordable his things are. I almost suspect there's going to be a price increase in the future because I don't know how he makes a profit, but it's cool and I like it. And so I started buying some BuckRail gear. And the first set that I got was this end cap replacement, very high quality. And it does actually have a blade. If you can see that, there is a sight, okay? There's a sight. So if you wanted to use a rear sight of your own and put that on a Crosman rail, this would work, but just not with the factory rear sight. So if you're gonna go ahead and get the barrel cap here that's threaded, then also get some sort of either a buffer tube or something on the other end. And I recommend the Crosman rail at the same time. Get those 3 pieces together. And so as long as you have the gun apart, you can do all that. I know it's a little bit of extra money up front to spend to buy this piece and then a can and then maybe the Crosman rail and the end cap. But I'm telling you, as soon as you do one of them, you'll be like, oh, now I want to do this other piece and I want to do this other piece. And it all kind of gets held together by that steel breech. And so I decided, in the last couple builds just to get them all at the same time. And it was a good decision. So it's making the best use of my time, getting fitment just right. And now that barrel, which used to spin freely, is really, really tight. It's locked in. I feel like it was a very, very tight, in a good way, fit into this right here, this end cap. And now I feel like it's super concentric. I barely had to drill out this this LDC device on the end, which works very well from BuckRail. This is their newest generation, incredibly quiet. You almost can't tell that this is being shot from like 20 feet away. Unless you would hear the sound of the impact. Sometimes it just sounds like a little click. It is so quiet. Can't believe how effective this is. And I'm really happy with that. I also have the BuckRail plumper pumper underneath. That's one thing. I'm a bigger guy. I have like XL size hands. It doesn't come with a Picatinny piece. I put that on there. I think it was from B&T Industries. It was from an extra part I had laying around. And sometimes I like to actually throw this into a tripod that has a NATO clamp as well as an Arca clamp. And so I can clamp it in there and actually shoot off my tripod from time to time, which is really fun to do. It's cool to have an air gun that is as capable as this one is. And so I added that little piece, but the plumper pumper, I needed that just for a little bit more real estate, a little bit more grip even. And then it matches this here, and that's cool. I probably should get some plumper or this design from BuckRail. He makes grips as well. I should probably get that and just uniform the whole thing. Something I did add later or update again later, because I used to have a fixed stock on this one from BuckRail. He makes fixed buffer tubes that come out of the back. Very solid, very rigid. Liked it a lot. But I got this, and this is the poor man's folder. And so basically what you're seeing on the end there is, I'll go ahead and point this behind me a little bit. This is the folding mechanism, but underneath there is a Picatinny slot, just like you've seen probably in some other side folders if you're into that kind of thing. And yeah, this attaches to that, so you don't actually have to leave the stock on there. And this is his in-house design right here. I like this one on this particular build. I think it looks kind of cool. It's a really solid monolithic piece here, and it has a little bit of grip on the very end. I also have some of his other end caps and pieces. It's another design I'll talk about sometime, but this one is kind of my pride and joy because it shoots so incredibly tight. It shoots so well. I was shooting that at 50 yards today. I can't believe the groups that I get out of a Crosman 1377. You know, little pumper, multi-pump, 8 pumps, and this thing shoots tighter than most of my other air rifles, and I'm shooting it with a 1X. Now, when I get beyond 50 yards, I would say the other one that I have that has a 1-12 on there, just because I can see better, and it has a reticle that's set up for that kind of thing. It's got an Add-A-Ball 1-12 on there. That one I probably can shoot a little bit further. You know, I can dial to targets, and that's great. This one I can't dial, and you can't shoot what you can't see, so the 1X is a limiting factor, but I just kind of keep this for closer shots and shooting squirrels. Actually, I can miss the squirrel from time to time, and they don't hear me. They might hear the pellet, but they have no idea what's going on. It's so quiet, and there's enough power here. I can actually shoot them, and like I'm in like 20, 25 yards with full power. I can still kill them. Part of that is just being able to be stabilized. If I'm shooting off a tripod and I'm locked in here, and then I have a stock, so I have like 3 points of contact to hold on to this, it is really steady. And again, I adjusted that trigger. Just a lot of cool things about it. I'm really happy with it. I think I probably have 4,000 pellets at least through it. I'm going to go on a conservative guess here because I can't remember. I haven't kept track as well as I do with other rifles, just because I knew I was probably going to burn through these. But it's still holding up. A couple things just to comment on as far as 1377s go. This right here, it's a little loose, and it's not the BuckRail. It's not because of that. This is appropriately tightened to the first arm right here, this piece of metal. It's actually this piece in here and this piece in here. It's the hinge point that it pumps on, that it grabs and goes back and forth like this. That piece in there right here is getting a little loose. I've kind of worn it out a little bit. I do my best to try to pump straight back and forth and not grind it sideways. You know, it's kind of thin metal. I think they probably could do a little thicker metal or higher quality steel. I don't know, something like that, just so it holds up longer, because if I'm only 4,000 pellets in, I'm probably going to have to replace that at some point. But I'm kind of okay with it, considering how well it shoots. It's not that big of a deal. Another critique I'll say is I don't know why Crosman sells this at the price they do without the steel breech installed. It comes with a plastic kind of breech or whatever else it is. Maybe it was aluminum, but I feel like it was plastic. And the barrel would spin, and the end cap that these come with from the factory is really not that impressive. So it could still shoot reasonably well, but the barrel would spin. And so that's variation, and I just don't want any variation whatsoever. So that part right there kind of bothered me. With the old one, I couldn't use, this is also a BuckRail component. This is a barrel clamp Picatinny piece. Sometimes I throw things on there like a laser or something just for fun, but I couldn't use a barrel clamp piece on the previous, or the initial model rather, not very well, because it actually would twist and rotate. And that's not the fault of BuckRail. Again, that is just the design inherent to the Crosman. I think most of them are decent, and there's little tricks you could do if you don't want to buy all this other stuff to stabilize your barrel. I just think for how good they are, if Crosman would put a little extra time into a little better component here, since it is a pumper, you want a good quality pump arm, and you want steel that's going to hold up, They probably could have made it threaded from the factory. That's just the future. Everything should be threaded. Everything should have a can on it, in my opinion. And the rail itself, so that you can put optics on there, and not dovetail rail. Dovetail is an ancient old school technology, and I know that it kind of still works. Of course, it still works a little bit, but everything should just be Picatinny. That's been the standard for over 20 years, really. I can't believe that air gun companies and supporters, people who are buying air guns, are not complaining more about that. It's really frustrating, especially on brake barrels. But on things like this, it shouldn't be something you have to ask for. I think that Crosman should just make a version of this, a modern version of this, that has an optics rail that is shrouded over the barrel all the way up to the front, Picatinny all the way across the top, maybe throw some, a Picatinny in the butt cap right here, something from the factory, and that would just be a modern version. That would be really cool. People could upgrade it on their own and maybe charge a little extra for that model. That's fine. You already do that with other models that you make, Crosman. I just think the trigger, the breech, a couple of these other things, Crosman probably should have sold it that way from the factory. It's my opinion, but I'm really happy with it now that I've upgraded. I've got it pretty much the way that I like it. I might tweak a couple things here and there, but the thing that made this what it is ultimately the BuckRail gear. That's the stuff that has made it stand out. That's why people ask to see it and shoot it, and they're impressed with it when it's really quiet and they see how accurate it is. It's because all of this is really held together by this steel breech. That's important, but then just these little upgrades that make it more fun. You're not going to shoot something that isn't very accurate and it's not very fun, or it'll just look stupid, or it's not ergonomic for your size and your shape. This now fits me really well, so I'm happy with it. I can recommend it. It's lasted at least, like I said, a minimum of 4,000 pellets. So that's kind of my review, and I know I'm just talking, blabbing. I have lots of videos of shooting this stuff. Go watch those if you want to see lots of shooting videos. For now, I just wanted to talk about my actual experience with this so far. Thanks, guys.